So, what happens when you take a classic and well-loved shooter from the 80s and introduce it onto powerful new hardware such as the PlayStation 1 and add some 3D effects plus some of those newfangled polygon things? Well, let's take a look at R-Type Delta on the PlayStation 1 and find out. In 1981, I fell in love with a horizontal shooter. Its name was Scramble, and I loved everything about it. The sound, the visuals, the gameplay, everything. Later that year, I saw Defender for the first time in the arcades, and although I was absolutely awful at it, there were too many buttons for my liking, I still loved it. It was an amazing game. In 1985, I saw Nemesis for the first time in an arcade on Brighton's seafront, and it's probably my favourite arcade machine to this day. It blew me away. I absolutely loved the whole idea of powering up your ship. It was just brilliant. And in 1987, at the tender age of 15, it happened again, this time with Irem's incredible R-Type. Now, I love space shooters, especially the horizontal type, more than probably any other arcade type. So, when I saw R-Type Delta in 1999 on the PlayStation 1, I figured this was going to be horizontal shooter heaven. Now, I was incredibly excited about the PlayStation 1. It was a great time for me in the history of video gaming. The technology was new and Sony's little grey console was doing amazing things. It truly was a game changer, and indeed one of the consoles that really spelled the end for the video game arcade, because for the first time ever we had amazing visuals and gameplay actually at home. Now, this is the fourth game in the series, and of course the first one to feature 3D polygon graphics, whereas the earlier R-Type games were of course 2D bitmap games. The game is set in the year 2164, and the game now offers 3 different choice of craft instead of just your original R9 fighter. As you'd expect, each craft has differing strengths and weaknesses. There is a backstory of sorts, and it's all to do with the evil Bido Empire again, approaching the Earth and stuff like that, but let's not worry about the backstory. One of the new weapons in the game, and what gives the game its name, is the new Delta weapon. Now, this weapon is charged as you use your force unit to contact enemies. This increases the dose meter on the screen, and when it's full you can unleash its full fury and annihilate everything on the screen. Once it's used, you have to charge it up all over again before you can use it. There are 7 levels to this game, and the level design in places is absolutely brilliant, if somewhat frustrating in the later levels. Some of the levels are actually harder than the end of level bosses themselves, but then again this is R-Type, and what would R-Type be without some degree of frustration? The levels themselves are absolutely wonderful. They're so well designed and interesting to look at, and the few that really stick in my mind is the underwater level, where you can play both above and below the waterline, and the sound and music actually becomes mellow and subdued, just as if you were, well, I don't know, underwater I suppose. The biological level is where the usual mixture of xenomorph-like entities, brains in broken glass jars, and there's lots of Geiger-esque awesomeness to behold. And of course a downright creepy last level featuring weird alien crying babies and flying chemical and mathematical equations. It's just all a bit weird. It looks like you're in some weird dimension populated with just weird crap, really. There are some great end-of-level bosses, and some of these reintroduce us to some of our favourites from the original game. It's a fabulous nostalgia trip for fans of the original R-Type. So, does the 2D to 3D makeover work, or is it just a forced polygon fest that offers nothing new? Well, personally, I think this is one of the best R-Type games since the original. Yeah, there is a bit of pixelation here and there on the textures, and yes, the frame rate does drop from time to time when things get a bit too hectic on screen, but at the end of the day, this is R-Type for a new generation of console. Well, what was a new generation of console back in the 90s, of course. For me, this game works, and it works well, and if you are a fan of R-Type, you can't really not have a copy in your collection. So, let's take a quick look at R-Type Delta on the PlayStation 1. Right, R-Type Delta on the PlayStation, and as you can see, it's quite a different look from the R-Type games that have gone before it. Enemies are all made up of polygons, and they look really good. Good looking game this is, I really, really like it. Great use of background as well. So some of the enemies we're used to seeing in the R-Type games, but they've got a complete new look about them. Again, because they're made of polygons probably. But already we've got some very, very big set pieces in the background. And one thing that I did notice about this game, sometimes it's difficult to determine what's in the background or what's in the foreground. So you do find yourself sometimes flying into something 1 minute, which is actually on the same horizontal plane as you, and then there's stuff happening in the background that doesn't actually affect you. So you do have this whole changing environment all the time that you've got to be aware of, just to make sure that you don't crash into stuff. Explosions are beautifully rendered as well. It's a good looking game. Have I said that already? It is. It's good looking, isn't it? Here's one of the first of the larger enemies. Again, beautifully drawn. Really, really like this. And the way it actually drifts in and out of the background and the foreground is very, very clever. It gives you a sense of depth that we've not seen before in R-Type. And here's the first of the big bosses. This is the end boss of level 1. And although I've not played this for a long time, it's the same old strategy, isn't it? Launch the force straight into the heart of the enemy and just blast away like mad. And on this particular enemy it worked, but on some of the later ones that does not work as easy. It's not as effective on some of the later bosses. Now here's a look at level 2. Now this is one of my favourite levels. I think it's beautifully drawn, and the ability to go in and out of the water as well is great. But the industrial settings are nice. And I think that's something to do with the story. I can't quite remember the background story now, but it's basically the Bido have finally got to Earth. So all these levels that you're fighting in, with the exception of 1 or 2, are Earth-based industrial scenes. The music and sound effects are a bit muted now because we're underwater, which is a really nice touch. Now, I have to admit something here. I was playing this for hours, grabbing some footage for you guys to look at, and it was very, very difficult and very frustrating at times. I really struggled to actually make some progress in this game because it is quite tough. So I put a cheat on. I've got an invincibility cheat on purely so that I can show you these levels. And to be honest with you, had I not used that, I'd still be playing this game a week later, just trying to show you some of the levels. So if you see what looks, so if you spot something that looks like bloody hell he should have got killed then, yes, you're probably right, I should have got killed then, but I have got invincibility on just to show you these levels. So don't hate me too much for that, will you? But yeah, some of these levels I really struggled with. Here's one of the enemies that I really like. This was fabulous. You've got this massive four-legged mechanical thing which you have to fly around and continuously shoot at just to find out which parts of it are vulnerable. But just like the gigantic mothership on level 3 of the original, it's just an amazing set piece. Beautifully drawn. Very tough as well, very tough. I particularly like the way that the force works on this particular chosen ship. You can see that it's tethered to my ship, and that tether is actually dangerous. So that chain or tether or link or whatever you want to call it that's connected to my orb, you can actually use that as a weapon in itself. So that's the end of him. So here's level 3. Again, looks absolutely brilliant. Now for some reason this bit here with all these industrial looking things in the background reminds me of the beginning of Aliens, where Ripley's shuttle is rescued. I think that's probably where they got that from. This level was an absolute swine, I've got to admit. It doesn't look too bad at the moment, but later on it literally turns into some kind of maze, and it's more an act of remembering things than it is your skill in actually shooting stuff. But then again, a lot of horizontal shooters are like that. A lot of shooters are like that. They're more a test of memory than they are your skill at moving joystick and pounding the fire button. You just have to remember your way through some of the levels, and this level was very frustrating actually. Here's the end of level boss of level 3. Again, very, very tough. It's downright suicidal in places, this game is. Right, love this level. Level 4 I think we're on now, and this is a very biomechanical looking level. A bit like, oh, I can't remember now, is it level 3 or 4 of the original game? So those creatures are back again, and you've got the jars with what looks like brains in. Very, very nice level. And actually looking back at this now, there's one thing I appreciate that you don't really appreciate whilst you're playing the game, and that's the background. Because you're too busy focused on what's going on in the foreground, you don't get to see, you don't really look at the beautiful artwork in the background. The things start to get really, really tough at this point in the game, and there's some great surprises coming up actually on this level. So here's a familiar end of level boss for those that are fans of R-Type. You can see that we've seen him before, so it's a great nostalgia trip here. And here is another old friend from R-Type, as you can probably recognise. It's the big mothership, which was an absolute swine to kill in the original game, because you had to fly all the way around it and then attack the whatever that pumping engine sort of thing is on the top there. Great for fans of the original to see some of these enemies come back. What level's this now? 5 is it? I can't remember. 5 or 6. I've lost count. And as you can see in the bottom left hand corner, the dose meter is now full. So there you go. There's the Delta weapon, which wipes everything out, and the dose meter is now empty. Here is another fabulous, fabulous return of an end of level boss from the original R-Type, albeit looking a lot better than I remember from the original game. Great to see this enemy back. Now this is the last level, and this is just weird. I mean, it looks like you're in some kind of weird upside down dimension, and you've got these alien babies in crystals that are crying. It's just very, very freaky. It works, it does work, I just think it's very freaky, it's very strange. And I dread to think what they're supposed to be. They looks like, dare I say it, some kind of weird alien sperm? Is that what they are? It's not right, I know that much. Yeah, so this I kind of like thought there's got to be some kind of alien egg, some kind of alien nucleus egg, and being protected by all these alien sperm, it's just all a bit screwed up, isn't it, really? And I do believe that's your final enemy there. That's the final boss in the game, I think. Defeated. And there you go. Like I said, if I didn't have invincibility on, there is no way I would have got this far, and there's no way I could have shown you all these levels. So there you go. This is the end of R-Type Delta, and I had a very frustrating afternoon battling my way through this, but to be honest with you, it's a fabulous game. I really, really like it. Probably one of the best R-Type games in the series. Hope you enjoyed that look at R-Type Delta, and looking forward to Revival this weekend, so hopefully see some of you there. So thanks for watching as always. Hopefully I'll be able to have some time to bring you more videos coming up in the near future. So take care, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye now.